In the misty twilight of Eldridge village, where the ancient bell tower loomed like a sentinel over cobblestone streets, a chilling discovery shattered the evening calm. The year was 1935, and the air carried the faint chime of the tower clock, its hands frozen at midnight despite the setting sun. Behind the massive clock face, hidden in the shadows of gears and pendulums, lay the lifeless body of Reginald Thorne, the esteemed clockmaker. His throat bore the mark of a garrote, his eyes wide in eternal surprise. Whispers spread through the pub. Was it robbery? Revenge? As the constable cordoned off the scene, a diminutive Belgian detective, Hercule Poirot, happened upon the village during a countryside retreat. Little did the villagers know, the intricate machinery of murder had just begun to unwind. Chapter 1. The Arrival in Eldridge. The train rattled to a halt at Eldridge Station, its whistle piercing the damp air of a late summer evening in 1935. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a mustache as precise as a metronome, stepped onto the platform, his patent leather shoes clicking against the worn boards. He adjusted his Homburg hat, inhaling the scent of coal smoke mingled with the faint sweetness of wild roses that clung to the hedgerows beyond. Poirot had come to this quaint English village seeking respite from the clamor of London. Invited by his old friend, Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard, who was holidaying nearby. But as Poirot often remarked to himself, fate has a way of weaving intrigue into the fabric of repose. Eldridge was a postcard of rural England, its cobblestone streets winding past thatched cottages and a bustling market square, where vendors hawked apples and fresh-baked bread. Dominating the village was St. Mary's Church, its ancient bell tower rising like a stone sentinel, its clock face glowing faintly in the twilight. The air carried the distant chime of that very clock, though its rhythm seemed curiously off, as if time itself hesitated in this sleepy hamlet. Poirot, ever observant, noted the villagers' hurried glances toward the tower, belying the commanding presence that parted the villagers like a ship through waves. At the base of the tower, he found Inspector Japp, his face grim under his bowler hat, directing a young constable to cordon off the area. "Ah, Poirot!" Japp exclaimed, spotting the detective. "Bad timing for a holiday, I'm afraid. Reginald Thorne, the village clockmaker, was found dead this morning by the bell ringer, garroted with a wire, likely from his own workshop, and hidden behind the clock face in the tower's mechanism room. No signs of struggle, but the clock stopped at midnight. Odd, since it was working fine yesterday." Poirot's eyes gleamed with interest. "The clock, mon ami? It is not merely a machine. It is a witness. Tell me, who are the players in this tragedy?" Japp gestured towards the churchyard, where villagers whispered behind gloved hands. "Thorne was well liked, but not without enemies. His wife Amelia Thorne stands to inherit his estate, quite a fortune, I hear. Then there's Victor Langley, his business partner. They've been at odds over debts for months. Lady Eleanor Hargrove, a local aristocrat and clock collector, had her eye on a rare Elizabethan piece Thorne restored. She didn't take kindly to his refusal to sell. And Reverend Silas Blackwood, the vicar, had a public row with Thorne last week over missing church funds." Poirot nodded, his mind already cataloguing details. "And the scene of the crime? I must see it." Japp led him up the narrow spiral staircase of the bell tower, the air growing cooler and mustier with each step. The mechanism room was a cramped chamber of whirring gears and pendulums, the massive clock face casting eerie shadows. In a shadowed corner,
Behind a lattice of iron cogs lay Reginald Thorne's body. His face was ashen, his eyes wide in a frozen stare. A thin wire embedded cruelly in his throat. In his clenched hand was a broken pocket watch, its glass shattered, its hands pointing to a time that made no sense. 3 o'clock, though the tower clock read midnight.
"Was a good man," she said, unprompted. "But he kept late hours at that tower. Last night I saw a light up there past 11. And then, nothing." Poirot sipped his tea, his mind racing. "Madame, did you see anyone else near the tower?" She hesitated. "Well, I thought I saw Lady Hargrove passing by, but it was dark. Could have been anyone." Japp jotted this down. "We'll question her. And Amelia Thorne. She was seen arguing with her husband yesterday afternoon in the market square." Poirot's moustache twitched. "An argument, a light in the tower, a stopped clock. The pieces begin to form, but the picture is not yet clear." The evening deepened, the sky bruising purple over Eldridge. Poirot retired to his room, but sleep eluded him. He sat by the window, gazing at the bell tower, its silhouette stark against the stars. The clock remained silent, its hands unmoving, as if guarding the secret of Reginald Thorne's final moments. Poirot's little grey cells hummed with activity, piecing together the fragments, the garrote, suggesting a calculated killer, the pocket watch, possibly planted, the footprint, an anomaly in the dust. And then there was the village itself, Eldridge, with its quaint charm, hid currents of envy, greed, and perhaps vengeance. He recalled Japp's list of suspects: Amelia Thorne, the widow, whose inheritance could mask deeper motives, perhaps an affair, or a desire to escape a controlling husband; Victor Langley, the partner, whose financial disputes hinted at desperation; Lady Eleanor Hargrove, whose obsession with a clock might conceal a darker fixation; and Reverend Silas Blackwood, whose righteous facade could hide a grudge deeper than church funds. Each had opportunity, each had motive, but only one had woven this intricate web of death. Poirot rose, lighting a candle to review his notes. The broken watch nagged at him. Its time, 3 o'clock, was wrong, yet deliberate. A red herring meant to mislead, or a message from the victim. He sketched the footprint's tread in his notebook, its sharp edges suggesting a well-made shoe, not a labourer's boot, and the wire, common in a clockmaker's workshop, yet its use spoke of intimacy with Thorne's trade. A nod toward the churchyard. Friend or foe? Accomplice or witness? The night held its breath, and Poirot knew the game had only begun. Chapter 2. The Widow's Tale. The morning sun struggled through the heavy mist that cloaked Eldridge, casting a pallor over the village as Hercule Poirot and Inspector Japp made their way to the Thorne residence. The Georgian manor stood at the edge of the village, its ivy-clad walls and mullioned windows exuding an air of faded grandeur. The garden, though meticulously tended, seemed to hold its breath, the roses drooping as if mourning their master. Poirot's polished shoes crunched on the gravel path, his keen eyes noting the orderly flower beds and a garden shed half hidden by yew hedges. "Order, mon ami," he murmured to Japp, "is the hallmark of a disciplined mind, or a guilty one." Inside, the drawing-room was a shrine to time itself. Clocks of every description adorned the walls and mantel, a gilded ormolu ticking with French elegance, a grandfather clock groaning with age, and a delicate silver fob watch gleaming under a glass dome. Their collective ticking filled the air, a relentless reminder of the hours Reginald Thorne would never count again. Amelia Thorne, the widow, greeted them with composed grace, a black mourning dress accentuating her porcelain complexion. Her auburn hair was pinned tightly, and her green eyes, though red-rimmed, betrayed no tremor. She gestured to a velvet settee, her movements as precise as the mechanisms her husband once crafted. "Madame Thorne,"
Poirot began, his voice soft yet piercing. "Your husband was a man of great skill, a master of time. Yet someone has stopped his clock forever. Tell me, who might wish such a thing?" Amelia clasped her hands, her fingers bare of rings, save for a simple gold band. "Monsieur Poirot, Reginald was beloved in Eldridge. His clocks graced homes from here to London. Enemies? I can scarcely imagine. But—" She hesitated, her gaze flickering to a portrait of her husband above the fireplace, a stern man with a craftsman's hands and a guarded night. He went to check the bell mechanism after supper. "I retired early, around 9. Jap scribbled, his pencil scratching like a metronome. "No one saw you after that?" "I was alone," she replied, her tone clipped. The maid had the evening off. Poirot's gaze roamed the room, settling on a mahogany side table where a porcelain teacup sat, its rim stained with a faint residue. "This cup, madame, it was used recently?" Amelia glanced at it, her composure unshaken. "Yesterday's tea. I haven't had the heart to tidy." "Inspector," Poirot said softly, "have this analyzed, not for poison, perhaps, but for something else." His tone suggested a sedative, a subtle clue to Amelia's evening activities. Jap nodded, signaling the constable to bag the cup. As they questioned her further, Amelia painted a picture of a quiet life disrupted by her husband's obsession with his craft. "Reginald was secretive about his work," she admitted. "He kept a locked drawer in his study, said it held designs for a new clock. A masterpiece, he called it." Poirot's interest sharpened. A locked drawer suggested secrets, and secrets often bred motives. The conversation turned to the other suspects. "Victor Langley," Amelia said, "is a brute. He threatened Reginald last week, said he'd ruin him if the debts weren't settled. And Lady Eleanor Hargrove, she pestered Reginald for that Elizabethan clock he restored. She offered a fortune, but he refused. She wasn't pleased." "And Reverend Blackwood?" Poirot prompted, noting her slight flinch. "The Reverend. He accused Reginald of withholding church funds. They argued at the vestry meeting. Silas, Reverend Blackwood, has a temper, though he hides it behind piety." As they prepared to leave, Poirot lingered by the fireplace, his fingers brushing the portrait's frame. "Madame, one last question. Did your husband ever mention a pocket watch? Perhaps one not his own?" Amelia frowned. "No, but he often repaired clients' watches. Why?" Poirot smiled enigmatically. "A detail, nothing more." Outside, the mist had thickened, cloaking.
"Inspector, is a clock with too many hands, each pointing to a different hour." They returned to the village square where villagers whispered behind market stalls. Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the fragments. Amelia's composure was too perfect, her alibi too convenient. The teacup residue hinted at a sedative, perhaps to ensure Reginald was vulnerable. But the garrote required a different hand, someone with access to the workshop's wire. Langley's temper, Hargrove's obsession, Blackwood's grudge, all were threads in a tapestry of deceit. At the Rose and Crown, Mrs. Baxter served lunch, her gossip as free-flowing as the tea. "Mrs. Thorne's a fine lady," she said, "but I heard whispers she and Mr. Langley were close. And that pocket watch in Reginald's hand looked like one Victor always carried." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Merci, madame. You are a fountain of knowledge." As they ate, Jap recounted the coroner's initial findings. Thorne died between 11 and midnight, the wire cutting deep, death swift but deliberate. The stopped clock at midnight was no accident. Someone had tampered with the mechanism, perhaps to mark the moment of murder or to mislead. Poirot sipped his soup, his thoughts ticking like the clocks in Amelia's parlor. "The pocket watch, Inspector. It is a red herring, I think. Its time, 3 o'clock, contradicts the tower clock. planted, perhaps, to implicate Langley. But the footprint, that is real. We must trace it. The afternoon brought them to the churchyard, where the tower loomed, its silence oppressive. Poirot examined the exterior, noting scuff marks on the stone wall below the clock face. Someone climbed here, he said, or descended. The killer knew the tower well. A villager, an elderly man with a cane, approached. "Beg pardon, sir, but I saw somewhat odd last night. A light in the tower, past 11. And a woman, looked like Mrs. Thorne, hurrying away." Japp jotted this down. "Another strike against the widow. Or a clever ruse," Poirot countered. "We must visit Mr. Langley next. His wire, his watch, too convenient, no?" As they left the churchyard, the mist parted briefly, revealing the tower, the valley. It sounded like a warning, and Poirot's mustache twitched. Something, or someone, was waiting in the shadows, ready to strike again. Chapter 3. The Partner's Grudge. The morning mist had burned away, leaving Eldridge bathed in the pale light of a 1935 autumn sun. But a chill lingered in the air as Hercule Poirot and Inspector Japp approached Victor Langley's workshop. The building squatted at the edge of the village square, its weathered sign proclaiming "Thorne and Langley, clockmakers," in faded gold letters. The hum of lathes and the sharp scent of machine oil greeted them as they entered, a stark contrast to the genteel elegance of the Thorne manor. Inside, the workshop was a labyrinth of workbenches cluttered with gears, springs, and half-assembled timepieces, each ticking in its own rhythm, as if competing to mark the passage of Reginald Thorne's final hours. Victor Langley, a burly man in his mid-40s, with a blacksmith's shoulders and grease-stained hands, stood at a lathe, shaping a brass cog. His face, weathered by years of labor, darkened as he saw the visitors. He wiped his hands on a rag, the motion abrupt, as if wiping away guilt. "Inspector Japp," he said gruffly. "And who's this? Another city man poking into our business?" Poirot inclined his head, his mustache impeccably waxed despite the morning's exertions. "Hercule Poirot, monsieur, a detective of some repute. I seek only the truth behind the partner's untimely demise." Langley snorted, tossing the rag onto a bench. "Reginald Thorne was a cheat, plain and simple. Owed me thousands from botched deals, clocks sold under the table, profits pocketed. That pocket watch found in his hand, mine. He borrowed it weeks ago to study its mechanism, then smashed it, likely in a fit of spite." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his gaze sweeping the workshop. Spools of wire, identical to the garrote that ended Thorne's life, hung on a rack by the wall. "Convenient, no? That the murder weapon should come from your stock," murmured. "Time, it seems, is a motif in this murder. Tell me, monsieur, did you see anyone near the Thaler last night?" Langley hesitated, his eyes darting to the window. "I was in my cottage, but I heard footsteps outside. Late. Could have been anyone. Village folk are always wandering." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And this receipt?" He produced a crumpled slip from his pocket, found earlier on the workshop floor, dated yesterday and marked for rat poison. "Yours, I presume?" Langley's jaw tightened. "Aye, for the storeroom. Rats chew the wires. Doesn't mean I poisoned anyone." No, Poirot said, his tone soothing yet probing. "But it suggests possibilities." He examined the wire rack, noting one spool was lighter than the others, its end freshly cut. "This wire, monsieur, it matches the garrote. You are a man of strength, capable of such a deed."
Langley slammed a fist on the bench, rattling tools. I didn't kill him. Thorn was trouble, but I needed him alive to settle our debts. Go talk to Amelia. She was cozying up to me behind his back. Or that Hargrove woman, mad for his clocks. They've got more to hide than I do. Jap raised an eyebrow. Amelia Thorn and you? That's a new one. Langley's defiance faltered. Village gossip. Forget I said it. But Poirot's mind was already turning, the gears of his little grey cells aligning. An affair between Langley and Amelia would explain much. Motive for both to want Reginald out of the way. Yet the wire pointed too neatly to Langley, and the pocket watch, his own, seemed a deliberate plant. A red herring, perhaps, to divert suspicion, or a clumsy attempt at framing. As they left the workshop, Poirot paused at the door, his eyes catching a glint in the dust. A tiny brass screw, out of place among the stone chips. He pocketed it discreetly, its significance unclear, but its presence a whisper of intent. Outside,
"Someone climbed here," he said, "or descended, perhaps to escape notice. The killer knew the tower's secrets." He glanced at the footprint from the previous day, still visible in the dust, its sharp tread suggesting a refined shoe. Langley's boots were heavy, utilitarian. Another discrepancy. A young apprentice, barely 16, approached, his cap twisted nervously in his hands. "Beg pardon, sirs, but I worked late in the shop yesterday. Saw Lady Hargrove pass by, heading toward the tower, near 10. She looked furtive." Jap jotted this down. "Hargrove again. She's cropping up everywhere." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the new thread. "Merci, jeune homme. Your eyes are sharp." The boy scurried off, and Poirot turned to Jap. "Lady Hargrove, Amelia, Langley, Blackwood, each a cog in this machine of murder. But the screw I found, it belongs to a clock, perhaps from the tower itself, a clue to the killer's presence." The sun climbed higher, but the village felt no warmer. Poirot's thoughts swirled. Langley's temper and the missing wire pointed to guilt, yet the pocket watch and poison receipt felt staged. Amelia's possible affair added a layer of intrigue, and Lady Hargrove's late-night wanderings suggested obsession or worse. Reverend Blackwood's public spat with Thorn hinted at a deeper grudge, and the footprint, always the footprint, tied the crime to someone with access and intent. At the Rose and Crown, Mrs. Baxter served tea, her gossip as pungent as the brew. "Langley's a rough sort," she said, pouring. "Heard him shouting at Thorn last week, something about a loan gone sour. And that poison receipt? Could be he meant to do more than kill rats." Poirot sipped delicately, his eyes narrowing. "And what of the tower, madame? Any talk of strange happenings?" She leaned closer, voice low. "Folks say the clock's haunted. Last night I saw a light up there, flickering like a ghost. And then, silence." Jap frowned. "A light? Same as the old man said." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A light, a shadow, a screw, a footprint. The puzzle grows, but the picture emerges." As they left the inn, the village settled into afternoon quiet, the market stalls closing. Poirot's gaze Hastened to the tower, the stone steps spiraling into shadow. At the top, the mechanism room was empty, but a faint scent lingered. Lavender, Amelia's perfume. And on the floor, near the clock's gears, lay a single glove, fine leather, a lady's size. Poirot lifted it, his mind racing. A clue, mon ami, or another distraction? The widow plays a dangerous game. Chapter 4. The Collector's Envy. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Eldridge, its golden rays struggling to pierce the lingering mist that clung to the village like a shroud. Hercule Poirot and Inspector Jap navigated the winding lanes toward Lady Eleanor Hargrove's estate, a sprawling manor on a hill overlooking the church and its silent bell tower. The estate's wrought-iron gates creaked open, revealing manicured lawns and a fountain that gurgled softly, its marble cherubs glistening with dew. The air carried the faint scent of lavender and old money, a stark contrast to the gritty oil and brass of Langley's workshop. Poirot's patent leather shoes clicked on the flagstone path, his keen eyes noting the orderly precision of the gardens, a reflection, perhaps, of a mind that coveted control. The manor's interior was a museum of antiquities, its oak-paneled halls adorned with tapestries and portraits of stern-faced ancestors. In the salon, a cavernous room lit by a crystal chandelier, clocks dominated every surface. A Baroque mantel clock with gilded cherubs, a mahogany long-case clock ticking solemnly, and, pride of place, an Elizabethan table clock, its intricate engravings catching the light. Lady Eleanor Hargrove awaited them, seated regally in a high-backed chair, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon. Her silk dress shimmered in shades of emerald, and her hands, adorned with a single sapphire ring, rested calmly on a silver tea-tray. "Monsieur Poirot, Inspector Japp," she said, her voice smooth as polished glass. "A tragic day for Eldridge. Reginald Thorne's death is a loss to us all. Please, sit." "Tea?" Poirot inclined.
Hargrove's lips tightened, a crack in her polished facade. "Reginald gifted it to me yesterday, a gesture of goodwill. He knew my passion for such treasures." "Curieux," Poirot murmured, rising to inspect the clock. Its brass casing gleamed, but faint scratches marred the base, as if pried open in haste. He ran a gloved finger along the edge, his mind ticking like the mechanism within. "These marks, madame, they suggest force, not care. Perhaps you took it after his death." Her face paled, but she recovered swiftly. "Absurd, I would never. Reginald entrusted it to me before the fete." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And your whereabouts last night, between 11 and midnight?" "With Reverend Blackwood, dining here until 10, she replied. "Then I retired. Silas can confirm my alibi." Japp scribbled, his pencil scratching like a distant clock. "The Reverend, eh? We'll check with him. But a lad saw you near the tower around 10, looking furtive." Lady Hargrove laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "A lad's fancy. The mist plays tricks, Inspector. I was here, reading by the fire." Poirot paced the salon, his steps measured, his mind a whirl of gears. The scratches on the clock suggested theft or tampering, and the apprentice's sighting placed her near the crime scene. Yet her alibi, if confirmed, was solid. He paused by a bookshelf, noting a volume on horology, its pages well thumbed. "You are a scholar of time, madame. Did you ever visit Thorne's workshop or the tower to study his methods?" "Occasionally," she admitted. Reginald was generous with his knowledge, though guarded about his latest project, a revolutionary clock, he said. Poirot's mustache twitched. "A project worth killing for, perhaps." She stiffened. "I am no murderer, Monsieur Poirot. If you seek motive, look to Victor Langley. His debts drove him to desperation. Or Amelia Thorne. She and Reginald argued constantly." As they spoke, Poirot's gaze fell on a small compartment in the Elizabethan clock.
Compartment, perhaps seeking something Thorne hid. But what? As they prepared to leave, Poirot lingered by the salon window, gazing at the tower in the distance. Its clock face remained frozen at midnight, a silent accusation. "Madame," he said, turning, "one final question. Did you see anyone else near the tower last night?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to the window. "I thought I saw a shadow, perhaps the Reverend, crossing the churchyard, but the mist was thick." Japp jotted this down.
Another lead to chase. This village is crawling with secrets. Outside, the air grew cooler, the sun dipping behind the hills. Poirot and Japp walked through the estate's gardens, the gravel crunching underfoot. "She's hiding something," Japp muttered. "That letter, the scratches, too convenient." "Oui," Poirot agreed. "But convenience in a murder is suspect. The letter may be a plant, like the pocket watch. And the shadow she saw, Reverend Blackwood? Or another player in this game?" They passed the fountain, its water glinting like coins. Poirot paused, his mind replaying the interview. Lady Hargrove's poise was formidable, but her hesitation over the letter betrayed unease. The scratches on the clock suggested urgency, perhaps a search for something valuable, designs, money, or a secret Thorn guarded. And her mention of the Reverend felt deliberate, a deflection to shift suspicion. In the village square, gossip swirled like the mist. A fishmonger, scaling cod, muttered to a customer. Lady Hargrove was mad for that clock. Offered Thorn a king's ransom, but he wouldn't budge. A flower girl nearby added, "I saw her at the fete, whispering to the Reverend. Looked like plotting to me." Poirot's ears pricked, his little grey cells cataloguing every whisper. At the Rose and Crown, Mrs. Baxter served ale, her tongue as loose as ever. "Lady Hargrove's a proud one," she said, wiping the bar. "She and Thorn had words last month, something about a rare mechanism he wouldn't share. And that letter? Sounds like something she'd keep quiet, to protect her reputation." Japp frowned. "Everyone's pointing fingers. Langley, Amelia, now," he said. "The killer is clever, leaving clues that point everywhere and nowhere." As they headed toward the vicarage, a sudden noise stopped them, a rustle from the churchyard hedge. Poirot spun, his eyes piercing the dusk. A figure darted away, cloaked in shadow, too swift to identify. "Mon ami," Poirot whispered. "We are watched. The murderer fears our progress." Japp drew his truncheon, but the figure was gone, swallowed by the night. Poirot's heart quickened, not with fear, but with the thrill of the chase. The letter, the scratches, the button, the shadow, all were pieces of a puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. Lady Hargrove's obsession with the clock hinted at motive, but her alibi held, for now. The Reverend's shadow in the churchyard added another layer, and the button suggested a woman's presence, or a clever man's deception. The tower loomed above, its clock silent, its secrets locked within. As Poirot and Japp approached the vicarage, a distant bell tolled, not from St. Mary's, but from a smaller church across the valley. It sounded like a summons, and Poirot's moustache twitched. The game was afoot, and the next move would bring them closer to the truth, or deeper into the murderer's trap.
Chapter 5. The Reverend's Secret. The twilight draped Eldridge in a veil of indigo as Hercule Poirot and Inspector Japp approached the vicarage, a modest stone building tucked behind St. Mary's Church. The air carried the damp chill of an autumn evening in 1935, mingled with the faint scent of wood smoke from village chimneys. The bell tower loomed nearby, its silent clock face a grim reminder of Reginald Thorne's murder, its hands frozen at midnight like a stopped heart. Poirot's polished shoes crunched on the gravel path, his keen eyes noting the vicarage's austere facade, ivy clinging to the walls, windows dark save for a single flickering candle. "The house of a man of God," he murmured to Japp. "Yet even here, shadows hide secrets." Inside, the vicarage was a study in restraint. The parlor, lit by a single oil lamp, held a worn oak table, a threadbare rug, and bookshelves groaning under tomes of theology and scripture. Reverend Silas Blackwood greeted them with solemn dignity, his gaunt frame stooped from years of bearing spiritual burdens. His white hair framed a face etched with lines of piety and something deeper, grief perhaps, or guilt. He gestured to two stiff-backed chairs,
his hands trembling slightly. "Monsieur Poirot, Inspector Japp," he said, his voice resonant with pulpit cadence. "I expected your visit. Reginald Thorne's death is a tragedy, a stain upon our village. How may I assist?" Poirot settled into the chair, his mustache impeccably waxed despite the day's exertions. "Mon reverend, you knew Monsieur Thorne well. A generous donor to the church, no? Yet I hear of discord, a public argument over funds. Tell me of this." Blackwood's eyes darkened, his fingers clasping a silver cross at his neck. "Thorne was a sinner, as are we all. He promised funds for the bell tower's restoration, but the money never came. Last week, at the vestry meeting, I confronted him. He claimed financial strain, but I suspected deceit. We exchanged harsh
Bookshelf, noting a faded photograph tucked between volumes. A young woman, her features strikingly similar to Blackwood's, standing beside a younger Reginald Thorne. "This woman, mon reverend, who is she?" Blackwood's hand froze on his cross, his voice dropping to a whisper. "My sister, Margaret. She passed many years ago. A painful memory, irrelevant to this matter." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his little gray cells whirring. "Irrelevant, you say? Yet Thorne's presence in this photograph suggests a connection. A family matter, perhaps, that festered over time." Blackwood's face paled, his composure cracking. It was long ago. Margaret was wronged by Thorne's father, a scandal that broke her. Reginald knew, but he was a boy then. "I forgave, as my faith demands." Japp raised an eyebrow. "Forgave, or harbored a grudge? That's a strong motive, Reverend." Poirot interjected, his tone soothing. "Let us speak of last night. Lady Hargrove confirms your dinner, but after 10 you were alone, and a witness saw a shadow in the churchyard. Perhaps you, mon reverend." Blackwood's hands trembled, but his voice held firm. "I was here, praying. The churchyard is open to all. You mistake shadows for substance." Poirot's gaze fell to the floor, where a faint scuff mark caught his eye. Mud, fresh, matching the tread of the mysterious footprint from the tower. "These boots, mon reverend," he said, nodding to Blackwood's polished shoes. "They are fine, not the heavy soles of a laborer. Have you visited the tower recently?" "I tend the church grounds," Blackwood said quickly. "Mud is common here." "Oui," Poirot murmured. "But mud from the tower's base is distinct." He pocketed a mental note, the footprint a persistent thread in the tapestry of clues. The photograph, the argument, the mud, all pointed to a deeper motive, one Blackwood concealed behind his clerical facade. As they questioned him further, Blackwood recounted Thorne's contributions to the church. A generous facade, he hinted, masking a man who hoarded wealth. "He promised a new clock mechanism," Blackwood said, "but delivered only excuses. The towers," said, drove Langley to threats. "And Amelia. She was distant, unhappy, but nothing specific." Japp scribbled, his pencil scratching like a clock's tick. "We've heard about Langley and Amelia's affair rumors. You're not telling us anything new." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Patience, mon ami. The truth lies in what is not said." He turned to Blackwood. "One final question. This letter." He produced the note from Lady Hargrove's clock. "Meet me at midnight. Danger. Does it stir any memory?" Blackwood's face remained impassive, but his fingers tightened on the cross. "I know nothing of it. Thorne was secretive, always scribbling notes. Perhaps it was his." As they prepared to leave, a faint creak echoed from upstairs, barely audible over the wind rattling the windows. Poirot's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "Someone is here, mon reverend." "A guest?" Blackwood's composure wavered. "The wind, nothing more. This old house groans." Japp frowned, his hand on his truncheon. We'll check, just to be sure. They ascended the narrow staircase, the air growing colder with each step. The upper hall was dark, its doors closed, but a faint lavender scent lingered. Amelia Thorne's perfume, unmistakable. Poirot pushed open a door to a guest room, finding it empty save for a rumpled shawl on a chair, its pattern matching one Amelia wore at the manor. "Curieux," he murmured. "The widow visits. But why?" Japp examined the shawl. "She's everywhere. Her perfume in the tower, now here. Collusion with the reverend." "Or surveillance," Poirot said. "Someone watches, or someone hides." Outside, the village sank into night, the tower's shadow swallowing the churchyard. Poirot and Japp returned to the square, their breath visible in the chill. The reverend's story held, but cracks appeared. The photograph, the footprint, the shawl. Blackwood's grudge against Thorne's family suggested a motive deeper than church funds, and the lavender scent tied Amelia to the vicarage, perhaps as an ally or a spy. At the Rose and Crown, Mrs. Baxter served supper, her gossip as rich up.
The garrote wire, likely from Langley's workshop. The pocket watch, a red herring. The letter, possibly forged. The footprint, now linked to Blackwood, and the shawl, pointing to Amelia. Each suspect wove a thread, but the pattern remained elusive. As they left the inn, a sudden noise stopped them, a low moan, like a wounded animal from the churchyard. Poirot's heart quickened, his hand tightening on his cane. "Mon ami," he whispered, "the killer stirs. We must be swift." They hurried toward the sound, the tower looming above. In the churchyard, a figure knelt by a gravestone, sobbing softly. It was the young apprentice from Langley's workshop, his face streaked with tears. "I saw it," he stammered, seeing them. "Last night, in the tower, a shadow with a wire, strangling Mr. Thorne. I was too scared to speak." Poirot knelt beside him, his voice gentle. "Who, mon jeune? Describe this shadow." The boy shook his head. "Too dark, but it wore a long coat like the reverend's, and I heard a woman's voice, whispering." Japp's eyes widened. "Amelia and Blackwood, working together?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Or a clever disguise. The truth is close, but it slips through our fingers like mist." The boy fled, leaving them in the shadowed churchyard. The tower's clock remained still, its secrets locked within. Poirot's mind raced. Blackwood's grudge, Amelia's presence, the apprentice's tale, all pointed to a conspiracy, or a masterful deception. As they turned toward the vicarage, a single bell tolled across the valley, its echo like a heartbeat. The game was afoot, and the next clue would either illuminate the truth or plunge them deeper into the murderer's trap. Chapter 6. Piecing the Puzzle. The studio, the Rose and Crown Inn, was a haven of warmth against the encroaching chill of Eldridge's evening, its hearth crackling as Hercule Poirot and Inspector Japp settled into a corner booth. The year was 1935, and the village seemed to hold its breath, as if the silent bell tower clock had cast a spell over its cobblestone streets. "You reckon?" "Oui," Poirot replied, tapping a pencil against his notebook. "The time is wrong, deliberately so. Someone wishes us to suspect Victor Langley, but the watch's placement feels staged, like a prop in a play." Japp flipped through his notes. "Then there's the teacup from Amelia Thorne's manor. Residue tested positive for a sedative, not poison. Suggests she drugged him, made him easy prey for the garrote. And her perfume at the vicarage, that shawl, she's tangled up in this." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Indeed, but the sedative implies a plan, not passion. Amelia's motive, inheritance, perhaps an affair, grows stronger. Yet the garrote requires strength, precision. Could a woman of her delicacy wield such a weapon?"
Japp grunted. Maybe she had help. Langley's wire matches the garrote, and he's got no alibi. Plus, that poison receipt we found in his workshop. Rat bait, he claims, but suspicious. Too suspicious, Poirot countered, his moustache twitching. The receipt, like the watch, points too neatly to Langley. And the letter in Lady Hargrove's clock, "Meet me at midnight, danger," bears Thorne's initial, but the handwriting, it lacks his flourish. A forgery, perhaps, to lure him to the tower. The inn buzzed with villagers, their whispers carrying fragments of gossip. Mrs. Baxter, the innkeeper, bustled over with a fresh pot of tea, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Heard you've been to the vicarage, gentlemen. Reverend Blackwood's a godly man, but that row with Thorne over church funds, folks say it wasn't just money. Something about his sister years back." Poirot's ears pricked. "Merci, madame. Your words are like breadcrumbs in this forest of mystery. What more do you know of this sister?" Mrs. Baxter leaned closer, voice dropping. "Margaret Blackwood, poor soul. Ruined by Thorne's father, they say. A scandal that drove her to an early grave. The Reverend never forgave the Thorne family, though he hides it behind sermons." Japp scribbled furiously. "That's motive, Poirot. Revenge. Deep and old." "Oui," Poirot murmured, and narrowing at the hurried script. "Beware the clock's secret compartment." No signature, no mark, but the paper smelled faintly of lavender. "Mon ami," he said, passing it to Japp. "Another player enters the game, or perhaps an old one, disguising their hand." Japp frowned. "Amelia again? She's everywhere. Her perfume, her shawl, now this note." "Or someone using her scent to mislead," Poirot said. "The clock's compartment. We must investigate. Thorne hid something, a secret worth killing for." The inn grew quiet as patrons drifted home, the fire casting long shadows. Poirot reviewed his notes, sketching the footprints' tread in his notebook, sharp-edged, a gentleman's shoe, like Blackwood's. He recalled the coroner's report, no defensive wounds, suggesting Thorne was unconscious from the sedative when strangled. The killer knew the tower's layout, the clock's mechanisms, and Thorne's habits, a craftsman, a confidant, or a betrayer. Outside a storm brewed, thunder rumbling like a warning. Poirot and Japp donned their coats, heading for the tower. The village was a maze of shadows, gas lamps flickering in the wind. At the churchyard the tower loomed, its clock face a pale moon in the darkness. Poirot ascended the spiral stairs, his cane tapping each step, the air growing colder and mustier. In the mechanism room, gears gleamed faintly, their silence oppressive. He examined the clock's base, searching for the secret compartment hinted at in the note. A faint click revealed a hidden panel, barely visible among the brass cogs. Inside was a small ledger, its pages filled with cryptic numbers, accounts perhaps, or a code. Poirot tucked it into his pocket, his mind racing. "This, mon ami, is what the killer sought, or planted. A record of Thorne's dealings, or a trap for us." Japp peered over his shoulder. "Looks like financial records. Debts, maybe, tying to Langley." "Or secrets tying to Blackwood's sister," Poirot said. "We must decode it." As they descended, lightning illuminated the churchyard, revealing a figure by the hedge, a woman, her silhouette fleeting.
"Some say he was hiding a fortune."
Poirot's moustache twitched. "A fortune or a scandal? Merci, madame." Japp yawned, his eyes heavy. "We've got motives galore. Amelia's inheritance, Langley's debts, Hargrove's obsession, Blackwood's revenge. But the clues keep circling." "Oui," Poirot said. "But the circle tightens. The ledger, the note, the shadow, they point to a truth hidden in plain sight. Tomorrow, we confront the Reverend again."
His sister's ghost haunts this case. As they retired, a crash of thunder shook the inn, and Poirot glanced at the tower through the rain-streaked window. Its silhouette stood resolute, guarding its secrets. The ledger's numbers danced in his mind, a puzzle within a puzzle. The lavender-scented note suggested Amelia's involvement, yet the shadow's swiftness hinted at another, Blackwood, perhaps, or a new player. The footprint tied to the vicarage, the shawl to Amelia, the letter to Hargrove, the wire to Langley. Each clue was a note in a discordant symphony, and Poirot's little grey cells hummed to find the melody. As he blew out his candle, a faint sound reached him, a tap like a footstep outside his door. He rose, cane in hand, and opened it to find the hall empty, save for a single pearl button on the floor, identical to the one found near the tower. "Mon Dieu," he whispered, "the killer grows bold." The storm roared, and Poirot knew the next day would bring either revelation or danger. Chapter 7. Midnight Confrontation. The storm that had threatened Eldridge all evening unleashed its fury as midnight approached, its thunder rolling like a drumbeat over the village. Rain lashed the cobblestone streets, turning them into glistening ribbons under the flickering gas lamps. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the chill of 1935, ascended the spiral staircase of St. Mary's bell tower, his cane tapping rhythmically on the worn stone. Inspector Japp followed, his truncheon at the ready, his face taut with anticipation. The anonymous note, "Beware the clock's secret compartment," had drawn them back, ledger from the clock's hidden compartment. Each was a thread in a tapestry of deceit, and tonight, Poirot sensed, a knot would be untied. A faint creak broke the silence, not from the storm, but from the shadows near the clock's gears. Poirot raised a gloved hand, signaling Japp to pause. "We are not alone, mon ami," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain's drumbeat. A figure stepped into the dim light, Amelia Thorne, her black morning dress sodden, her auburn hair clinging to her pale face. In her hand, a lantern cast trembling shadows, its glow catching the fear in her green eyes. "Monsieur Poirot," she gasped, her voice trembling, "I didn't kill him, I swear. But I know who did, or I suspect. I came to find proof." Poirot's mustache twitched, his gaze piercing. "Madame Thorne, you risk much coming here alone. The note, 'Beware the clock's secret compartment,' it was yours, no?" Amelia's eyes widened, but she shook her head. "No, I received it too. Slipped under my door this evening. It said to come at midnight, that the truth lay here. I couldn't stay away." Japp stepped forward, his tone gruff. "Convenient, Mrs. Thorne. Your perfume's been everywhere. The vicarage, now here. And that sedative in your teacup. Did you drug your husband to make him easy prey?" Amelia's hands trembled, the lantern swaying. "I gave him a sedative, yes, but only to calm him. He was agitated, obsessed with his new clock design. I thought he'd sleep, not die." Her voice broke, tears mingling with the rain on her cheeks. "But I know who killed him. Reverend Blackwood. He hated Reginald, not just for the church funds, but for an old scandal. Reginald blackmailed him, threatened to expose a secret about his sister Margaret." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Blackmail, madame? A grave accusation. What proof do you have?" She fumbled in her pocket, producing a crumpled letter, its ink smudged by rain. "I found this in Reginald's study, hidden in his locked drawer. It's from Blackwood, begging him to keep silent about Margaret's ruin. It mentioned—" his arm swinging the wire like a whip. Poirot dodged, his agility belying his small stature, and shouted, "Monsieur Langley, cease this folly. You condemn yourself with such actions." Amelia screamed, dropping the lantern, which shattered, plunging the room into near darkness, save for lightning's sporadic flashes. The struggle was chaos. Japp grappling with Langley, Poirot shielding Amelia, the gears creaking as if protesting the violence. Langley's strength was formidable, but Japp's training prevailed, pinning him against a pendulum. "You're under arrest," Japp panted, cuffing Langley's wrists. Langley spat, his eyes blazing. "I didn't kill him. I came to find that ledger. Thorne's accounts prove he cheated me. I saw Amelia sneaking in here and followed. She's the killer, not me." Amelia shrank back, her voice a whisper. "I'm innocent, Monsieur Poirot. I loved Reginald, despite our troubles." Poirot's mind raced, the clues colliding like storm clouds. Langley's presence, the wire, the ledger, all pointed to guilt, yet his denial rang with conviction. The letter from Blackwood, if genuine, shifted suspicion to the reverend, but Amelia's sedative and her presence here muddied the waters. And the note that lured them all, who sent it? As Japp secured Langley, a sharp crack split the air, a gunshot from below echoing through the tower. Poirot's heart leapt, his eyes darting to the stairs. "Mon ami, we are not yet done. Someone else plays this game." They descended swiftly, the rain-slicked steps treacherous. In the churchyard, the storm raged, lightning revealing a figure fleeing toward the village, a long coat like Blackwood's flapping in the wind. Japp gave chase, but the figure vanished into the alleys, leaving only a trail of muddy footprints, sharp-edged, refined, matching those from the tower. Poirot knelt, examining the prints, his coat soaked. The reverend, perhaps? Or a clever impostor? This shot, a distraction, to draw us away. Amelia, shivering beside him, clutched her shawl. "I saw no one, Monsieur Poirot. I swear, I only came for the truth." Poirot's gaze softened, but his about money owed. Poirot sipped his drink, his mind a whirl of gears. "Merci, madame. Your words are lanterns in this fog." He turned to Japp. "The ledger's numbers, payments to M.B., could they be Margaret Blackwood or another? The letter implicates the reverend, but its timing is too perfect. And the gunshot, a warning or a misfire." Japp rubbed his temples. "Langley's caught red-handed, but he swears he's innocent. Amelia's story about Blackwood sounds plausible, but her sedative and perfume tie her to the crime. And Hargrove's clock scratches. Maybe she's in deeper than we thought." Poirot nodded, his eyes on the fire. Each suspect is a cog, turning against the others. The footprint, the shawl, the button, the ledger, all point to a truth hidden in plain sight. Tomorrow, we gather them all. The killer expects us to falter, but Hercule Poirot does not falter. As they retired, the storm subsided, leaving a heavy silence. Poirot sat by his window, the tower's silhouette stark against the clearing sky. The clues danced in his mind. Amelia's sedative, Langley's wire, Hargrove's letter, Blackwood's grudge, the apprentice's shadowy figure, and now a gunshot and fleeing figure. The lavender-scented note had lured them to a confrontation, but the shot suggested desperation. Was Blackwood the mastermind, Amelia his pawn, or Langley a scapegoat? The pearl button, found earlier, gleamed in his hand, its twin in the churchyard a whisper of a woman's presence, or a man's deception. A faint tap at his door broke his reverie. He opened it to find the hall empty, but on the floor lay a single clock gear, its teeth sharp and gleaming. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered, "the killer taunts us." The tower's silence echoed in his mind, a challenge to his genius. The truth was close, but the storm had only begun to clear. Chapter 8. False Accusations. The storm had passed, leaving Eldridge bathed in the pale light of a 1935 dawn, the air crisp with the scent of wet earth and fading thunder. St. Mary's Church stood solemn in the village square, its bell tower casting a long Hargrove and Reverend Silas Blackwood to the vestry.
A small room off the altar where candles flickered, casting shadows that danced like spectres. The air was heavy, with the scent of wax and old hymnals, and the suspects sat in a tense semicircle, their faces a gallery of guarded expressions. Amelia, in her black mourning dress, clutched a handkerchief, her green eyes darting nervously. Langley, his wrists still red from last night's cuffs, glowered, his burly frame tense. Lady Hargrove, regal in emerald silk, sat with poised disdain, her sapphire ring glinting. Blackwood, his clerical collar stark against his pale face, gripped his Bible, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding, "we stand in the shadow of a crime most foul. Reginald Thorne was garroted, his life stolen behind the tower clock. Each of you has a motive, a thread in this tapestry of murder. Today, Hercule Poirot will weave these threads into truth." Japp cleared his throat, holding up the ledger from the clock's compartment. "Let's start with this. Thorne's accounts, showing payments to M.B. Who's M.B., and what were they paid for?" Amelia's voice trembled. "I don't know. Reginald kept his finances private. Perhaps Margaret Blackwood? I heard rumors of a scandal." Blackwood's head snapped up, his face ashen. "Leave my sister's name out of this. She's been dead 20 years, ruined by Thorne's father, not him. I forgave, as God commands." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Yet, mon reverend, your shoes match the footprint in the tower, and a letter in your hand begged Thorne to keep silent about Margaret. Blackmail, perhaps, drove you to murder?" Blackwood's hands shook, his Bible slipping. "I wrote to plead, not threaten. I was at Lady Hargrove's until 10, then praying alone. I'm no killer," Lady Hargrove scoffed. "Indeed, Silas was with me. But this ledger, perhaps it points to Victor Langley. He and Thorne fought over money constantly." "Reverend, ties you to the tower. But there is more." He produced the pearl button, holding it aloft. "This, found in the churchyard, matches one from Madame Thorne's coat, and a shawl, scented with her lavender, was found in the vicarage. Madame, explain." Amelia's eyes widened, her handkerchief twisting. I lost a button last week in the market, and the shawl, I lent it to a friend. I wasn't at the vicarage." Poirot's gaze shifted to Lady Hargrove. "And you, madame, the scratches on your Elizabethan clock suggest you forced its compartment, seeking what? The ledger, or something else?" Hargrove's composure wavered, her ringed hand clutching her skirt. "I confess, I took the clock from Thorne's workshop after his death. He'd promised it to me, but I found the letter inside. I kept silent, fearing suspicion." Japp snorted. "That's theft, Lady Hargrove, and it doesn't clear you." Poirot paced, his cane tapping the stone floor. "The poison receipt in Langley's workshop. Rat bait, he claims. A red herring, like the pocket watch set to 3 o'clock, contradicting the tower's midnight. But the gunshot last night, and the fleeing figure in a long coat, curieux. Reverend, you own a pistol, no?" Blackwood's face paled further. "For protection, yes. Kept locked in my study. I haven't fired it in years." The room crackled with tension, accusations flying like sparks. Langley pointed at Amelia. "She drugged him, I tell you, and her perfume's everywhere. Tower, vicarage, she's in it with Blackwood." Amelia sobbed. "I loved Reginald, despite our quarrels. The sedative was to help him sleep, not die." Hargrove's voice cut through. "Look to the reverend. His sister's scandal consumed him. He was in the churchyard last night. I saw him." Blackwood rose, his voice thunderous. "Lies. I was praying, seeking God's guidance for this troubled village." Poirot's voice sliced through the chaos, sharp as a blade. "Silence. The truth is a clock,
and its gears are aligning. The sedative points to Madame Thorne, but the garrote requires strength she may lack. The wire implicates smelling of almonds. Jap seized it, sniffing cautiously. Cyanide, by the smell. Poison, not sedative. This changes everything. Poirot's mustache twitched, his mind racing. A vial, hidden where Thorne died. Not rat bait, but a murderer's tool. Who placed it? And why now? The suspects exchanged glances, fear and suspicion mingling. Amelia whispered, "I never used poison. Someone's framing me." Langley growled, "Or me! That vial's not from my shop." Hargrove's voice trembled. "It could be anyone's. The tower's open to all." Blackwood clutched his Bible, murmuring a prayer. The devil's work, testing us. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his voice rising. The devil, no. A human hand, cunning and precise. This vial is a new gear, turning the clock toward truth, but we are watched. Last night's gunshot, the fleeing figure, the clock gear at my door. The killer fears we are close. He turned to Jap. "Inspector, secure the vial for analysis, and guard these four. No one leaves Eldridge until we unravel this." As Jap ushered the suspects out, Poirot lingered in the vestry, his gaze on the stained glass window depicting a shepherd and his flock. The clues swirled. The sedative, the wire, the watch, the letter, the footprint, the shawl, the button, the ledger, the gunshot, now the vial. Each pointed to a suspect, yet none fit perfectly. Amelia's sedative suggested complicity, but the garrote pointed elsewhere. Langley's wire and temper made him a candidate, but the watch cleared him. Hargrove's theft and letter hinted at deception, but her alibi stood. Blackwood's grudge and footprint were damning, yet his piety seemed genuine. And the vial, cyanide, a poisoner's choice, suggested a second attempt, or a desperate cover-up. Outside, the village stirred, gossip spreading like wildfire. Mrs. Baxter, sweeping the inn steps, caught Poirot's eye. "A vial, they say. Sounds like Lady Hargrove. She's got a chemist's knowledge."
One final mask. Tomorrow, we end this. As they turned back, a shadow moved in the churchyard, too swift to pursue. The tower's silence mocked them, its secrets locked tight. Poirot's heart quickened, not with fear, but with the thrill of the chase. The killer was close, and the next move would be decisive. Chapter 9. The Deduction. The morning sun pierced the mist that clung to Eldridge, casting a golden glow over St. Mary's Church, where the bell tower stood as a silent sentinel, its clock still frozen at midnight. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat immaculate and his moustache as precise as a pendulum, stood in the vestry, where the air was thick with the scent of candle wax and old hymnals. It was 1935, and the village pulsed with anticipation, the weight of Reginald Thorne's murder pressing on every heart. Inspector Japp, his face etched with the strain of the case, stood beside him, clutching a notebook swollen with clues. The suspects, Amelia Thorne, Victor Langley, Lady Eleanor Hargrove, and Reverend Silas Blackwood, sat in a tense semicircle, their eyes darting between fear and defiance. Today Poirot would unravel the tapestry of deceit, revealing the killer with the precision of his little grey cells. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice a clear bell cutting through the murmurs. "We have danced a dangerous waltz with murder. Reginald Thorne was garroted behind the tower clock, his life stolen with a wire from Monsieur Langley's workshop. A pocket watch,
set falsely to 3 o'clock, was clutched in his hand. A sedative laced his tea. A letter lured him to his doom. A footprint marked the scene. A shawl scented with lavender. A button. A ledger. A vial of cyanide. And a gunshot in the night. All are gears in this machine of death. Today Hercule Poirot will set them ticking to the truth. The suspect shifted uneasily. Amelia, her black mourning dress stark against her pale skin, twisted her handkerchief, her green eyes wide with dread. Langley,
The shawl and button suggest otherwise. Or perhaps someone used your scent to mislead, no? He turned to Langley. Monsieur Langley, the garrote wire came from your workshop, and the pocket watch, yours, was found in Thorn's hand, set to a false time. You claim it was stolen, planted to frame you. Your temper, your debts, and your presence in the tower last night with wire in hand. Damning, oui? Langley's fists clenched, his voice a growl. I didn't kill him. Thorn cheated me, yes, but I needed him alive to settle our accounts. Someone took my watch, my wire, to make me look guilty. Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Lady Hargrove. Madam Hargrove, you coveted Thorn's Elizabethan clock. Now in your possession, its compartment scratched as if forced. The letter inside, meet me at midnight, danger. There's Thorn's initial, but not his hand. A forgery, perhaps, to lure him to the tower. You dined with the reverend until 10, but a witness saw you near the tower, looking furtive. Hargrove's lips tightened, her ring glinting as she gestured. I took the clock, yes, after his death. It was promised to me. The letter was already inside. I'm no forger, nor a murderer. Look to Blackwood. His hatred for Thorn ran deep. Poirot's moustache twitched as he faced Blackwood. Mon reverend, your shoes match the footprint in the tower, and a letter in your hand begged Thorn to keep silent about your sister, Margaret, ruined by his father. The ledger's payments to M.B., Margaret Blackwood, or a living accomplice? The gunshot last night, from a pistol like yours, and a fleeing figure in a long coat, yours, perhaps? Blackwood's hands trembled, his Bible slipping. I forgave the Thorns, as God demands. I was praying after dinner with Lady Hargrove. The footprint, mud from the churchyard, nothing more. The pistol hasn't been fired in years. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the rising protests. Each of you points to another, but the clues converge. Let us unravel them. The sedative suggests a plan, not passion.
Words cut like a blade.
The truth, mes amis, is this. Reginald Thorn was sedated by his wife, not to kill, but to calm. But another used this moment. Reverend Blackwood, you met Thorn at midnight, lured by your letter, not the one in the clock, but another, begging silence about your sister's ruin. Thorn knew the truth, had inherited his father's guilt, and blackmailed you to keep it hidden. You, driven by vengeance, garroted him with Langley's wire, planting the watch to frame him. Blackwood's face crumpled, his Bible falling to the floor. No, I couldn't. Poirot pressed on, relentless. The footprint was yours, mon reverend. Mud from your garden, not the churchyard. The shawl, stolen from Amelia's manor, was left to mislead. The button, torn in your haste, was yours, not hers. Your coat has a missing one. The letter in the clock, you forged to suggest Thorn's fear, diverting suspicion. The vial of cyanide was your backup, hidden in case the garret failed. But you fled when we arrived, firing the shot to distract. Amelia gasped. Langley swore. Hargrove stared in shock. Blackwood's voice broke, a sob escaping. It's true. God forgive me.
Margaret's ruin consumed me. Thorne's father destroyed her, and Reginald knew, taunted me with it, demanded money to stay silent. I couldn't bear it. I lured him to the tower, used the wire. I meant only to end his cruelty. Jap stepped forward, cuffs ready. Reverend Silas Blackwood, you're under arrest for the murder of Reginald Thorne. The vestry erupted, villagers whispering as Jap led Blackwood away, his head bowed, murmuring prayers. Amelia wept. Langley slumped in relief. Hargrove's composure held, but her eyes betrayed fear. Poirot watched, his heart heavy with the weight of justice, but a final twist remained. As the suspects dispersed, the tower clock chimed, a single, resonant note, its gears stirring for the first time since the murder. Poirot's eyes widened. Mon Dieu, the clock speaks!
He aligned. The sedative cleared Amelia. The watch exonerated Langley. The letter exposed Hargrove's theft, but not murder, and the footprint, shawl, button, and vial condemned Blackwood. The ledger's MB was a red herring, a code for blackmail payments, not a person. The gunshot and gear were Blackwood's desperate attempts to derail the investigation. Poirot's heart was calm, the puzzle solved, but as he stepped into the churchyard, a shadow flickered in the hedge, a boy, the apprentice, watching with wide eyes. "Monsieur Poirot," he whispered, "I saw the reverend hide the vial, but I was too scared to speak sooner." Poirot knelt, his voice gentle. "You have done well, mon jeune. Truth is never late." The tower loomed above, its chime echoing across Eldridge. Justice had prevailed, but the village's secrets lingered, a reminder that even in quiet places, darkness ticked beneath the surface. Poirot's mustache twitched, his mind already turning to the next mystery, wherever it might lie. Chapter 10. Resolution and Farewell. The sun rose over Eldridge, its golden light banishing the last wisps of mist that had cloaked the village for days. It was a crisp morning in 1935, and St. Mary's Church stood serene in the village square, its bell tower no longer a specter of death, but a monument to justice served. The clock, silent since Reginald Thorne's murder, chimed once more, its gears freed from tampering, marking the passage of time with a steady rhythm that seemed to echo Hercule Poirot's triumph. Poirot, his overcoat immaculate and his mustache as precise as the clock's hands, stood at the edge of the churchyard, gazing at the tower with a satisfied nod. Inspector Japp, his bowler hat tilted slightly from fatigue, joined him, his notebook now closed, the case resolved. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice carrying the calm of a man who had tamed chaos. "The machinery of the mind has outpaced the clock of Eldridge. The truth is revealed, and the village may rest." Japp grinned, a rare light softer now, tinged with relief rather than fear. The cobblestone streets gleamed from last night's rain, and the air carried the scent of fresh bread from the bakery and roses from cottage gardens. The inn's oak-paneled interior was warm, its hearth crackling as Mrs. Baxter served tea, her gossip now a recounting of Poirot's brilliance. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, setting down a steaming pot, "you're a marvel. Blackwood, a murderer? I'd never have guessed with his sermons and all, and that clock chiming again. Folks say it's Thorne's spirit, thanking you." Poirot smiled faintly, sipping his tea. "No spirits, madame. Only the precision of Hercule Poirot. The clock was freed by the truth, as all things must be." The resolution had unfolded with clarity. Amelia Thorne, cleared of murder, inherited her husband's estate, including the fortune hidden in the clock's compartment, a legacy revealed by Thorne's will.
Her sedative, given to calm Reginald's nerves, had been exploited by Blackwood, who lured Thorne to the tower with a letter, garroted him with Langley's wire, and planted the pocket watch to frame the partner. Victor Langley, his temper and debts notwithstanding, was exonerated, his stolen watch a red herring. Lady Eleanor Hargrove, guilty only of stealing the Elizabethan clock, returned it to Amelia, her pride chastened. The cyanide vial, Blackwood's backup plan, had been hidden in haste, and the gunshot, a desperate distraction, had come from his pistol, fired as he fled the tower. Japp leaned back, his tea untouched. "The ledger's MB through us, Poirot. Not Margaret Blackwood, but a code for blackmail payments Thorne extracted from the reverend. Clever, but not clever enough to fool you." "Oui?" Poirot said, his eyes twinkling. "The clues were many, but the truth was singular. The footprint matched Blackwood's shoes. The shawl was stolen from Amelia to mislead, the button torn from his coat. The letter in Hargrove's clock was his forgery, and the gear at my door a taunt, nothing more." The village had come alive with the news. At the market square, vendors shared tales of
"Madame, the truth is its own reward. Live well, and let time heal." Langley, nearby, tipped his cap, his gruff demeanor softened. "Didn't think I'd walk free, detective. You saw through the lies. That watch, I'll never lend another." Poirot chuckled. "A wise choice, monsieur. Keep your tools close, and your enemies closer." Lady Hargrove, passing in her chauffeured car, offered a curt nod, her pride intact, but her obsession curbed. The clock, returned to Amelia, would remain in Eldridge, a reminder of greed's folly. At the platform, Japp clapped Poirot's shoulder. "Back to London, then? Or will you stay for more village mysteries?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "London calls, mon ami, but the world is full of puzzles. Hercule Poirot is never far from the next." The train whistle blew, its steam curling into the clear sky. Poirot boarded, his valise light, but his mind heavy with the case's echoes. The clues had been intricate. The sedative, a wife's care twisted into a killer's tool. The wire, a craftsman's betrayal. The watch, a false accusation. The letter, a forged lure. The footprint, shawl and button, threads of misdirection. The ledger and vial, shadows of a deeper plan. The gunshot and gear, a murderer's panic. Blackwood's confession had aligned them. His vengeance for Margaret's ruin, the motive that drove the crime. As the train pulled away, Eldridge receded, its tower a dwindling silhouette. Poirot gazed out the window, the rhythmic clack of the rails a counterpoint to his thoughts. The village, so quaint on the surface, had hidden a darkness that only his genius could illuminate. The clock's chime, restored, was a testament to order restored. But Poirot knew that time, like truth, was relentless. Another mystery would call. Another puzzle would demand his skill. Back in the village, the Rose and Crown buzzed with tales of Poirot's triumph. Mrs. Baxter, serving ale, spun the story for new patrons. That Belgian detective, sharp as a tack, found a vial of poison, a letter, even a button, and pinned it all on the reverend. A gunshot, a desperate act, had only hastened Blackwood's downfall, and the clock gear, left as a taunt, had been the killer's final mistake, a signature of his hubris. Japp, seated opposite, broke the silence. "You reckon there's more to it, Poirot? Any loose ends?" Poirot closed his notebook, his smile enigmatic. "The case is closed, mon ami, but life is never without loose ends. The human heart is a clock with many hands, each ticking to its own secret." The train sped on, fields blurring past. Eldridge faded into memory, its tower a distant chime. Poirot leaned back, his eyes half closed, but his mind was alert, ready for the next call of justice. The village had been a stage, its players unmasked.
and Hercule Poirot, the master director, had brought down the curtain. Yet as the sun climbed higher, casting shadows through the carriage, he knew another stage awaited, another puzzle to solve, somewhere in the vast, ticking world.